Hello, I am Whitney Ortiz with Whole Health Selfcare. Thank you for joining us for the Whole Health series, which convenes women leaders from around the world who share tips, tools, and strategies to help today's women professionals feel better, experience a greater quality of life, and have enhanced capacity to be able to lead with compassion, both at work and at home. We are so grateful to have with us Dr. Kristen Lee. Kristen, who is known as Dr. Kris, is the lead faculty for behavioral science at Northeastern University. She's an internationally recognized award-winning behavioral science professor, clinician, and author of Reset, Make the Most of Your Stress, which is the winner of the Next Generation Indie Book Awards Motivational Book of 2015, and Mentalligence, A New Psychology of Thinking. Dr. Kris's research and teaching interests include individual and organizational well-being and resilience, particularly for marginalized and underserved populations. She's been featured on NPR and CBS radio and is a regular contributor to the Huffington Post and Psychology Today. Thank you so much, Kristen, for being here with us and sharing your expertise.
Whitney, it's terrific to be with you today. Thanks for having me.
From your extensive experience within the field of behavioral science, what have you found to be one of the most important things that women leaders struggle with internally and that all of humanity is really wanting from them to express?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I've been able to have the great privilege of having this behavior science lens, but also working in leadership, specifically in my research, and kind of looking at women's leadership and thinking about the variables that we all face, right, which are extensive, as we all well know. And I think that a lot of times what I see is, in a very hyper-competitive global context, we're all trying to scramble, we're juggling many balls, we're trying to make our way and do everything well. And I think, there's obviously a lot of messaging we're getting in society. And so as I was looking at this and, my own life, my work, my research, an acronym that's a little bit non-traditional came up, and I'll call it ASSIES. And ASSIES stands for Asinine, Societal, and Self-Imposed Expectations. So I want you to know, and everyone who's joining us now, that I call myself a recovering perfectionist. I think many of us who are high achieving women, who are leaders, we want to show up in full fervor and we want to give our absolute best. However, in society, again, the expectations have just gotten to a point where it can become extremely unhealthy. And that can cause us sometimes to be in a position where we think we have to fake it till we make it. We can't necessarily express what's really going on in the back scene of our lives. We only want to kind of show that airbrushed, curated version of ourselves, that we have it all together. All while those two narratives are happening, we could be very successful on one hand, and then on the other hand, really be grappling with a lot of intensity. And obviously in today's climate, there's just so much that we're trying to contend with and trying to maneuver and navigate thoughtfully. So one way I think about it, and my own contemplations, my research, my work in this space is, to really come to a place of new authenticity. Sometimes I feel like we hear the word authenticity in leadership, in particular, parenting conversations, business conversations, the authentic life. And I think a lot of times it feels like authentic is the new fake, that how can we really be real and raw in a world that does kind of train us to be contrived or just to, be hyper performers. So one way I think about that is that, we have to learn to cut our strings. We're not puppets. We're not robots. We're not machines. As leaders, we're going to be, just again, have an incredibly intense situation at hand. And authenticity and being real about those dual narratives and the truth of the circumstances, showing up as women, even with one another, how we can connect, be ourselves, tell the truth of the nitty gritty, that can actually have a big impact on those around us, those that we influence. And, my research really talks about that, the ways that hiding never serves us well, that pretending or just staying in constant overdrive, those things can actually be barriers to finding our true voice, our true authenticity, and to being able to show up real. And
Mm.
at the end of the day, when we think about our shared humanity, that capacity to be ourselves, again, is going to be very liberating, but it's also going to help liberate one another. It's going to also we'll be way showers, if you will, to help those around us who might be grappling with their own version of asses, to break out of that and live a more whole, authentic, real, integrated kind of life.
Mhm. And it is that giving of permission, both at
Yeah.
work and at home, so that others feel that they can safely reveal themselves. And it is
Yes.
intergenerational too. It's not just the elders or the older leaders of an organization or the founders of an organization or a business that can lead in this way. And it's also the younger ones who can show that this is how they want to live their life, how they want to be, and to honor and to respect that as we carry forward in large organizations and businesses, what is going to be the new norm that we all want.
That's right. And I love how you put that. And I think at the end of the day, sometimes the younger generations get a lot of heat and they sort of, kind of become the cultural punching bag. But I
Mhm.
think the way society has moved is we are becoming more authentic about our stories, and we're self-advocating in new ways, and we're speaking up. And I think that that's a real um, it's a really positive thing for all of us, because and I think, as we've gone through, the pandemic and just our world, I think people are feeling more comfortable to be authentic and to be more vulnerable and ask for what they need in order to sustain within this complexity.
Mhm. Yes, there is such trauma, uncertainty ahead.
Yes.
Are grappling with a lot at
Yes.
home, at work. Are there any universal truths that you have found that we can all hold on to that will give us that inner strength and knowing to go forward?
Yeah, Winnie, this is something I think about constantly, in my writing, and my research, and again, just through everything, looking at the massive trauma at hand, and what can we hold on to? How do we make sense of all this? And as a resilience researcher, one of the things that encourages me tremendously is the fact that as human beings, we are wired for resilience. And I think that, we hear a lot of things about resilience. We can't enter a parenting, a leadership conversation, education conversation without that word popping up. And sometimes it's so popularized or mythical, like, you're either born with it or you're not, or this means, brute force and strength and suck it up and bite your upper lip and, pull your bootstraps up and be gritty. But what research really shows is that, again, resilience is more of a process of positive adaptation. It's not necessarily, again, a trait-based thing, but it's something that we can intentionally, shore up mindsets, behaviors, activities, intentionality that helps us to cultivate it. So it's not just sort of this like magical pixie dust kind of thing, or, just something, if you're really a tough person, you have it. It's something you can actively work on every day through specific strategies. And I think that's one of the great discoveries of modern brain science. This is my field of study, so I get very excited about, seeing how, we have brain plasticity. We are wired to be able to adapt. We're a very adaptive species. And we also have the beauty of metacognition, which is just a way of saying we are capable of thinking about thinking. We're able to be self-reflective. We're able to evaluate, take perspective, put into place strategies that help, again, sustain us, help keep us going, help us look at the big picture, to not only focus on what's broken, what's wrong, what's not working well, the deficits, the struggles, the issues, but also the strengths and the resources and the beauty and the assets and what's working well, and how we can, leverage that as a catalyst for growth and move it in a positive direction. And this is something I talk about in my writing, the upward spiral. You
Mm.
know, um, we always hear about the downward spiral. We don't hear about the upward spiral, that we can create positive emotion repertoires even in the face of, in the throes of tremendous challenge and strife. We are still able to create those moments of awe and gratitude and joy and appreciation, and use those as leverages to, come to a place of homeostasis, and hopefully to a place of joy and momentum as well.
Mhm. And it brings us to working with children being with adults, being within and across different cultures and traditions and religions and spiritualities and philosophies. These are universal truths that can give us all hope, and where we can think of resilience as something that, okay, we can do this, we can manage through. And as leaders, what kind of resiliency are you building within the organizations or the projects or the businesses, as well as within your own selves and your families? We are
Hmm.
all systems.
Yes.
And being so intentional about it all and very
Yes.
aware and open.
Yes. I love how you put that. And a way we could think about it is the movement from me to we. Again, those asses and social conditions cause us sometimes to be competitive with each other, or to kind of hoard our own resources, or to just, be in that mode where we don't often kind of look up and look around. What my research has really shown is something called collective efficacy, the idea that when you do well, I do well, when you hurt, I hurt. And when we think about disparities, whether because of race or class or gender or sexual orientation, we think about the social isms and the issues in society. That's part of resilience too. It's not just about each person, every person for themselves. It's really looking at how our activities, how our intentions, how our consciousness and the ways we show up in life, and we really look to eradicate these awful tides of oppression and discrimination and violence, and power over dynamics, and just that those hierarchies, those really need to be dismantled in order for us to really realize collective resilience as well.
Mm-hmm. And today's self-actualizing women professionals are working hard on building those new structures and paradigm that we will be able to all enter into, that will hopefully be a new era for
Yes,
us all.
desperately needed.
Yeah. What do you say to those who are really stuck in those moments of despair, the deep, dark moments? What are some tools that you have found work regardless of where they're from, the challenges they face? Are there any common denominators?
Absolutely. I think, one thing is just remembering that even when we don't feel resilient, we are resilient. And again, there's specific things we can take agency around, to help anchor us down. And that really comes in the form of deliberate, intentional self-care. And I think for many of us as leaders, as women, a lot of times we sort of say, our attention has to be 100% focused on everything else and everybody else, or that maybe those kinds of things feel very superficial, or maybe they won't feel like they'll work, or we don't have time. I think time is obviously a big barrier. But the science really shows that even micro rituals or micro breaks infused during our day are really vital to our whole health and our well-being. And I think for many of us as women, it's about giving ourselves permission to practice it, knowing that we matter, that it's important, and that cumulative effect of stress, all the things that kind of bubble over and make us feel, in that downward mode, if we're also, engaging in that self-care to help mitigate it. And, we're things like lifestyle medicine, proper sleep, nutrition, hydration, movement, community is one of the biggest protective factors when it comes to resilience. So relationships, authentic relationships, reciprocal relationships. So many times as leaders, a lot of people are like the force and everyone kind of goes to them and they're holding space, where we also having space held for us. I think that's really important. And then just again, making sure that those things are included. Don't wait for the deadline to be over, for the kids to be older, or for that next big break to happen, or for COVID to be over. Like, I think we sort of make all these negotiations within ourselves that we'll do it one day. But it starts now, and that can start with a 2-minute deep breathing meditation, or a 20-minute walk, doing walking meetings instead of sitting down. Or just asking for help and delegating things in your life, or setting new boundaries. So self-care comes in a lot of different forms. It's certainly not a one size fits all, but it starts with permission and then daily infusion. Even if it's just small steps, those things can add up and make a big difference.
Yes, and as you say, we all try to sometimes just push through.
Yeah.
Oh, but I can just get through this deadline and then I'll take care of myself. Oh, and now I have to take care of this person and this happened and all these circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But if our cup continues to be depleted, we are not able to serve, and that is where breakdown happens.
That's right. That's
And
right.
we don't have time to break
Right.
down. We don't have time to get sick and to give up on all that we really have to do. We actually make better decisions. We're more productive. We express a more positive energy that contributes to good relationships and,
That's right.
you know, and then enjoyable every day, and be able to see those small moments that are precious and to
Yes.
appreciate them.
Yes.
So the positive ripple effects really, as you highlight, show that self-care isn't something that's just nice to do, but is so critical to not only our own wellness, but to that of everybody we touch at work and at home.
That's right. We're going against science if we skip over it. Or I think the other thing is the curse of knowledge. Like, we know we're supposed to get better sleep, or we know the exercise is going to help us, or doing our yoga practice. But then, sometimes that can, like, okay, we think that that kind of gives us immunity
Mm,
from stress. And I think the other lie that sometimes we're sold is that, that we're human doings, not human beings.
mhm,
And that what we know from mindfulness research is just that full presence with ourselves, taking those pauses, clearing our minds. That's just so critical to nourish and edify us, again, given just the intensity of what we grapple with on the daily.
mhm. And in terms of the behavioral change, as you say, we can
Yes.
be reading all of the information about this until our eyes glass over. But if you don't actually put it into practice, what is the
Right.
thing that
Yes.
will make you actually do the change that is going
Yes.
to be for your good and the good of everyone.
That's right.
So it is a constant awareness, a constant intention, really putting this as a priority and recognizing how much you affect everyone around you and all the work that you do. Do
That's
you
right.
have,
I love how you put that.
thank you. And do you have any final words of wisdom for those women professionals out there who are juggling a lot and are really hoping to move forward through this time, bringing forth new ideas,
Mhm.
initiatives, projects, organizations, and businesses?
Absolutely. I think all leaders, right? All of us as women, we're creative, we're innovative, we're nimble, we're able to do, a tremendous amount. And I think just remembering that same kind of resourcefulness and that same kind of brilliance that you exert and all the ways in which you do can be used to strategically develop your own self-care and whole health plan, right? So use that same aspect of yourself and be creative, and know that, again, it might just be these small micro steps, but they can truly, give yourself permission to do it, but also, practice the self-compassion. Don't try to defy brain science. Don't try to defy what we know really helps someone be effective and to stay well and to do well. So just remembering that and holding in the fore and scheduling it, and setting those boundaries, because what I've seen in my clinical work over time is just so many women, put that hyper pressure on themselves, fall into the hooks of the asses, and then just be in a place of depletion and drain and oversaturation and overstimulation. And, none of us deserve to be in that place. And as you suggest, we're not necessarily going to, be putting the energy out into the work we're doing and the ways we're serving and leading. Um,
Mhm.
as we would if we were, really, nourishing our mind, bodies, and souls.
Mhm. Step forward with that authenticity. That's who you
Yes,
really are. So thank you, Dr. Kris, for sharing all of your wisdom and guidance and giving us a lot to think about and act upon. Really appreciate your being with us.
my pleasure. Wishing everyone well.